This is going to be one of those uncomfortable Sunday mornings because Jesus, through his word, wants to look into your bank statement this morning and what you do with money. He's speaking to his disciples. We know we're in this part of Luke's Gospel from chapter 9, verse 51. You remember Jesus sets his face to Jerusalem. It's time for him to be taken up to heaven by means of the cross and resurrection. And in this, from chapter 10 onwards, it's the teaching of Jesus that is the focus of Luke's Gospel. Not so much what he does, his miracles, that's in the earlier part. Now it's the teaching of Jesus. And here is teaching regarding money. Because our attitude to money and wealth is very revealing. So are you ready for Jesus to examine your bank statement? He tells the parable, doesn't he, first of all, of this manager who's rumbled. He's a dishonest manager. He's been wasting his master's property. It's the same word that was used of the prodigal son in the previous chapter who lived wastefully. Well, he's been wasting his possessions. Someone's grasped on him as a dishonest manager, and he's now being called to account. Give an account of your management, it says in verse 2, because you cannot be manager any longer. He held the same position as Joseph did, remember, in Genesis, who was the manager of all Pharaoh's household. So he had this very important position, and he's been behaving badly. He's been cooking the books. Well, he knows he needs to secure his future. He's going to lose his job. He's not in a position to do manual work. He's been used to working in his office. He's not ready to roll his sleeves up and do manual work. He's ashamed to go and beg. So he comes up with a plan. I'm in my master's bad books. I'm going to get into his debtors' good books. And so he calls them in one by one and reduces their bills. One of them he halves. Another, he takes a fifth off. He's ingratiating himself, isn't he, with his master's debtors. And he's acting very shrewdly, cleverly, sensibly, mindfully, prudently, as he thinks about his future. He's got a plan for the future. And so by reducing the bills of his master's debtors, he gets into their good books so that when he loses his job, they're going to look after him. They'll take care of him. And so, verse 8, the master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. Because he acted dishonestly, he wasn't commended for that. Because he acted shrewdly, thinking ahead, using his brains to make preparations for the future. The people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. Well, then Jesus comes to apply that parable that he's told in, I think, in three ways that we can explore from Luke 16. First of all, as regards the future. That's the point of the parable, wasn't it? The man prepared for his future. When he'd lost his job, he needed to prepare for what came next. So he got into the good books of his master's debtors so that they would look after him in the future. So Jesus says in verse 9, I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. So the dishonest manager, he used worldly wealth to get friends for himself so that he would be welcomed into their houses when he lost his job. Jesus says to his disciples now, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Jesus is urging his disciples to use shrewd forethought and preparations for the great change that's coming. So will your bank statement show that you have used your wealth money with your eternal future in mind? Yeah, it's good to prepare your pension fund and so on. That's important for your future. But what about your eternal future? Will your bank statement show that you've been investing in an eternal future? We are all passing from this world. Have you used money to prepare a welcome in the coming world? That's what Jesus is urging his disciples to do. Use your money to get friends so that they welcome you into eternal dwellings. Not that they can give you access into heaven. It's not that they're going to open the door and let you in. That's not what it's about. We get to heaven by trusting and believing in the Lord Jesus, repenting of our sin. But there will be those who will welcome us. David Gooding, in his excellent commentary on Luke, according to Luke, he says this: we should consider that while all believers will be equally welcome in heaven and all be loved equally, not all will have equally as many friends. If when accounts are rendered and it becomes known in heaven that it was your sacrificial giving that provided the copies of the Gospel of John, which led a whole tribe out of paganism to faith in Christ, will not that whole tribe show toward you an eternal gratitude, which they will not show towards me, who spent my spare cash on some luxury for my own enjoyment? That's the idea. The way we spend our money, there'll be those who are eternally grateful to us. And they will show that gratitude that they're in heaven. Paul says the same thing when he writes to Timothy in 1 Timothy and chapter 6. The Bible has plenty to say about money and what we do with it. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. That's how you make friends. In this way, they will lay up treasure for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so that they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Use your money generously, sharing, doing good in order to gain friends who will welcome you from what you've done for the cause of Christ and for the help of others. Jesus is speaking about investing in the future by divesting now. Remember, we were thinking about Frances Ridley Havergal the other week, and she came to a point in her life, why do I need all this jewellery that I've accumulated? So she sold all her jewellery, raised £50, which back in Victorian times was a substantial amount, and gave it to the Church Missionary Society. Oh, she'll have got friends who will welcome her when she on that day in glory. Are you investing in the future? Are you preparing for the future? Not your pension fund, your treasure in heaven. The friends there who will welcome you because of the way you've spent your money and used your wealth. Now, Jesus wants us to use our wealth with a view to the future, the eternal future that awaits us. So that's the first thing, future. But then also, Jesus then develops a theme in terms of fitness. Because the way that we use wealth will show how fit we are to be entrusted with real treasure. So what does Jesus say in verses 10 to 12? Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? So you see that our use of wealth is a training ground to show how fit we are to be in receipt of true wealth and true riches and our own possessions. It's picking up on the fact that the manager was dishonest. So Jesus is again, he's just saying, I'm not encouraging you to be dishonest in your use of wealth. Don't misunderstand the teaching. He was commended for his shrewdness in planning for the future. Jesus has dealt with that. Now he's shown us that we must exercise ourselves in a way that's as stewards to show that we're fit for being entrusted with proper wealth. So again, our use of wealth and money now will show whether we're qualified or disqualified to be trusted with heavenly wealth. It's interesting, isn't it? Notice the contrast that Jesus draws between wealth and those heavenly riches. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. There's a contrast. Wealth is very little. I don't know if you think of money like that. In the grand scheme of things, wealth is very little. There's much in the coming world that will just put it into oblivion. Very little, much. If you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? So worldly wealth, that's not true wealth. It's not real. It's passing. It's as he said in Timothy, it's uncertain. Can't be trusted. There's true riches in heaven. If you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? All that you've got now is not yours. It's not your property. It's someone else's. It's either been handed down to you and you're going to pass it on to someone else. Ultimately, God has entrusted you with what you have. God has given you all that you have. And so how are you going to handle what you have now? Because there's coming a day when you will have your own. Wow, what does that mean? Our own, that is ours, our treasure. That's ours eternally, that we'll never have to pass on, that we'll never lose. It will be ours eternally. We are stewards. All that you have been entrusted with is only yours for a short while. What are you going to do with it? John Blanchard said, our temporary stewardship will determine our permanent ownership. Our temporary stewardship, things that we've got just for a little while, will determine our permanent ownership. Are you trustworthy in what the Lord has committed to you, entrusted to you? Recognizing that it's his. And you must use it in the way that he would want you to use it. Our use of money shows our fitness to be entrusted with real wealth and true riches and our own possessions. So future, does your bank balance show that you've got an eye to eternity? Fitness, does your bank statement show that fit to be entrusted with true riches? Because of the way that you're handling what God has entrusted to you now. Future, fitness and focus is the final thought that Jesus drives home in that verse 13 that we mentioned earlier. No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Wealth Money vies with God for our focus, the focus of our energy, the focus of our aspiration, the focus of our longing. You can't serve both. You have to decide. Because as with what football teams you're going to support and what food you're going to eat, you need to make a decision as regards God and money. Both cannot be served with love and loyalty. You'll either love the one and hate the other, be devoted to the one and despise the other. An exclusive focus must be chosen and made in our lives, in our attitude, in our thinking. Money or God. And it's a decision we'll have to continually make at every stage of our lives. As Jesus sets before us these solemn lessons. What's the focus of your life? What does your bank statement tell you or tell Jesus about the focus of your life? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? Jesus reaches into our pockets and into our wallets and into our bank statements. Because that does reveal something about us and our priorities and our devotion and our love. We have a hymn. It's a hymn we haven't sung before, so I thought about singing it this morning, but we won't. But it's on giving. There aren't many hymns on giving, aren't there? But this one says, "The gifts we bring express our love to you who left the heavens above and showed through poverty and pain a God who gives and gives again. Though earthly wealth you never knew, our greatest riches come from you. Our needs are all by you supplied, and no good thing are we denied. Lord, you've entrusted to us all the wealth we have, some great, some small. As you have prospered us, we give, and yet in giving we receive. From love of money, save us, Lord. Make us obedient to your word. Seek first your righteousness and will, and all our stewardship fulfill." The future, our fitness, our focus. What will our bank statement say about that and about us? Jesus sets that before us, and in one sense it was appropriate that Chris read on, because the next parable is about another rich man. Luke has plenty to say about riches and our use of them. Notice the Pharisees' reaction. The Pharisees who loved money heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. We're going to sing our final hymn. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold.